and I don't know that there is a way to fix this, but like for Asia in general, the Asia minor is what teams are sort of gunning for. Like with the exception of like Renegades, Vici, and Tyloo who want to get to the major, everyone else is like, I want to get to the minor, and like that's my goal right now. And so the minor's just gone, and now they have nothing to work to for basically the entirety of 2020. Hello and welcome to Geographically Challenged Episode 2, the second of many, at least we hope. Back once again, obviously, I'm Elfish Guy, the host, and joining me as usual, although I'm not sure if we're at the point of saying as usual yet, is Pilly CSGO and official Blair, as if there was any other Blairs. Let's start with you today, Blair.
There is.
What's the deal here with official Blair? Why are you the official Blair?
Because Blair was taken. This guy with like 300 followers, and I'm like, all right, you know what? Fuck you.
You're the official one.
So there we go.
I see. And so Pilly, not official Pilly, how are you going today?
I'm pretty sad to be unofficial as well. You know, you got to go a little bit wider on CS handles sometimes, from time to time, on the Twitter handles as well. So you can't always get what you want. That's just like real life.
If you quit CSGO and like start like, you know, being a professional ANZ Valorant commentator, would you change your...
I've already wanted to change my handle. Actually, the person with the handle that I want is some chick named Cheryl in the United States who's like a marketing director for like some kind of design company. Cheryl, fuck yourself. Give me my handle back.
Well, that's a good start. Great start to the episode, Pilly. Thank you.
All right.
But the reason I've brought you guys here together is that you are the premier CSGO experts, whether or not you believe it. We all know Blair's the expert. Pilly, there's some question marks, but we're getting there, I think, at least as far as you and I are concerned. Let's talk about some Asian CS. That's what this whole podcast is about. And you might be wondering, what are we talking about today? It's not going to be all about Pilly's Twitter handle. What we're actually here to talk about is the minor and the major systems and all those RMR systems and all that sort of new shit that's come in, obviously because the Rio Major has had to have been moved due to coronavirus. And we're going to talk about what that kind of means for Asian CS, and then maybe a few little other bits and bobs and odds and ends towards the end of the episode, but they'll all be down in the YouTube description with the timestamps if you're interested. So let's jump into things here. First off with the minor, which obviously doesn't exist anymore. Now, we had the minor qualifiers for Asia, and that all sort of played out, and particularly touching on the ANZ region, at least for teams like Renegades and Order, they thought, great, we're going to the minor. And then a week and a half later, no more minor. That's obviously not good, Pilly.
No, it's not good. And I was basically thinking to myself, finally, Alistair, after so many months, so many years of just being a star player in the region, you know, he had like that global challenge where he was able to actually, you know, play out with the Chiefs lineup. You know, he's had some international tournaments, some international exposure, but it's been a long time between drinks to see him as a player of such a high caliber from our region be able to go overseas and earn himself an opportunity. And off the back of those announcements, it's almost like the world is against him in terms of being able to give him an opportunity to show that he is actually, well, from my opinion, and at least from his statistics domestically in the region, one of the potential better players in the region and in the world if he's going to give himself the chance to show it.
But unfortunately, he's not being given that opportunity. Now, I want to talk about opportunities here because as far as I'm concerned, like, losing the Asia minor is actually a really, really big deal for the Asian region. And not so much towards the top end of things. Like when you look at Renegades and Vici and Tyloo, these are teams that we see semi-regularly at international tournaments anyway. But Blair, if you look at Marzalai, Tiger, Lucid Dream, Camel Riders, like when was the last time you saw any of those teams at an international event?
I've never seen Camel Riders in any of them. Marzalai...
I love how you just had to...
They're in there. I didn't want to leave them out. No, but what I'm trying to say here is like, for these kinds of teams, this is probably the biggest event that they go to of the year.
Oh yeah, it is, right? I do agree with you. Obviously, keeping Tyloo and Vici and, you know, Renegades and Order aside, Marzalai, they do have Zulkenberg and and Machine Gun in that lineup and NCL as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they have had their time in the sun a few years back when they won the Taipei. I don't think it was called Asian Minor back then, but the IM Taipei Asian qualifier for the major where they can get the visas and all of that. Apart from that, just been downhill for the Mongolians, right? They haven't really achieved much. And the same thing goes with Taiga. Taiga, the two big names there would be Urcast and Dobu. Obviously, Urcast with Greyhound, he has been to quite a number of minors and other bigger events as well. And for Dobu, personally, I do believe he had qualified or he stood in for a couple of teams, in a couple of minors, a couple of these mixed teams, if I'm not mistaken, like I think 2018 and 19. So yeah, apart from these 4 players in these 2 teams, the rest of them haven't really seen many big events or any minors for that matter. So it's a big deal, definitely. For Lucid Dream as well, pretty cool storyline. We have the 2 Korean players coming in for them, right? And they want to prove a point as well. The fact that MVP PK completely crumbled, and now these 2 guys, they have an opportunity to show that, hey, you know what, we can still make it with some other teams. It was not us who were the problem. So yeah, a lot of opportunities lost. And for Camel homies, it's more like, yo, like, you know,
that could have been a dream come true for them, man.
That was your shot.
That would have been a dream come true. I wanted to see Camel Riders win this entire thing, dude. Like, can you imagine a storyline right there? Sick.
No. Not really.
Would never have happened.
I mean,
yeah.
it's a wishful thinking. Actually, when we do get later on down in the in this discussion, we're going to do some predictions. And the funniest thing I found was that literally everyone had Camel Riders as 8th seed. So I think that kind of goes to show what we thought their chances would be. But yeah, it would have been really nice to see them.
Nothing funny.
Not for them.
Yeah,
it is reasonable. Very reasonable. Yes, but it does kind of go to show, like for a team like that, you know, that might be like the one time you ever qualify for something of this caliber, and it never sort of rolls around again because of the way the Asian scene works, and with teams sort of swapping around, players moving everywhere all the time. Who's to say that's going to be a team come 2021? And even then, if they are they going to be the best team in the region still to then be able to qualify for another minor? Again, potentially not. So, look, for anyone that doesn't know what's happening with this RMR system and what we're talking about here, basically, because of the coronavirus, minors have been cancelled. You obviously can't be having people travel all over the world to compete at these LAN events. So what Valve has done is they've basically moved Rio, the whole major. I mean, I'm talking about the minor. Let's just be real. The major's moved as well. So that's why things are changing here. And so how do you qualify people for the major in November, assuming it goes ahead, when you can't have all of these sort of competitions on LAN and that kind of thing? So the minors can't exist. And what they've decided to do is they've tried to institute this RMR thing, because is it fair to have the teams that qualified for the minor go into the major in November, when potentially we've had 6 to 9 months of Counter-Strike where the teams could have disbanded, changed, and they may not necessarily be reflective of the best teams in the region anymore. So that's kind of why this system exists. But the system itself is very, very weird, at least from an Asia perspective. Like, I think it works for NA and I think it works for EU. But to look at it from Asia and ANZ as well, as they're technically now split regions almost, there is going to be multiple tournaments, we don't know how many, for teams to accrue points, basically, based on their result in these kinds of tournaments, to then give themselves a position, a ranking, which will then qualify them essentially to the major. So one team from ANZ and one team from Asia, which, by the way, is all of Asia, there's no more like sub-regions or anything like that, are going to get that spot at the major, which is kind of like, in a way, a bit of a cuck for a lot of the teams that are, you know, you look at, like, we've already talked about Order Right, for example, but like for Tyloo, for Vici, again, you expect one of those two teams is going to be probably the top of Asia. But for all of these other teams, like, there's no longer an international spot out of this system, because there's only one team from Asia and one team from ANZ. And there's also not that third sort of wildcard slot either. So you're missing an international berth, and you're having one less team technically go to the international stage of the major competition. So what do you think about this whole thing, Pilly? Is it good? Like, is it the best solution that we could have gotten? Because really, we did have to have a solution, didn't we? Like, there was no possibility that, or at least maybe there is. Like, what do you think about having the minor teams just go straight to the major anyway?
At the end of the day, I think coronavirus in a nutshell is how to make the best of a bad situation. There's never good choices to be made. It's always just trying to make the best out of the bad situation that you can, and try to negate the maximum amount of harm. For me, sitting in this position as someone who's more just a caster and I really like to focus on the CS, I don't really have that, TO sort of brain switched on where I can think of some creative solutions. Whereas, you guys, and especially some more knowledgeable people, might have some better options in mind that actually would be, super useful to implement instead of this system that they've got at the moment. Because, I can't say that this is the best or the worst option. I can say that it's just across the board bad in general for all of these teams. It's bad for the scene. It's going to be really, really damaging to the opportunities and the motivation of a lot of the players in both ANZ region, in the Asian region, because exactly like you said, if China's the strongest region in Asia and you've got a lot of talent to show in that whole region, and it's going to be a Vici or a Tyloo to take out that spot, it basically kills so many different nations' motivation to be able to continue to improve and go for CS, because this is what they look towards. These big opportunities, these big international tournaments have a trickle down effect of just improving the teams across the board and giving them the motivation to become the best, but also just the regional TOs. They're going to run more opportunities and more events for teams if there's teams there that are motivated to play, if there's orgs getting invested to be able to pick up those teams and run some of the costs of getting them to these events. It has a massive trickle down effect that's going to have a big negative impact.
Okay, what about this? Like for ANZ in particular, we're kind of lucky, or at least the ANZ teams are kind of lucky that 100 Thieves is over in North America right now and essentially has to compete in the North American qualifier as opposed to the ANZ qualifier now. But that is, again, and what you're sort of alluding to here, Pilly, is what is the situation in Asia, right? The big dogs are still in Asia. And for everyone else, it really doesn't seem like there's much of a go here. Blair, do you sort of echo those thoughts? Like, this seems to be it has to be a band-aid. There is no question about that, but it's just really unfortunate for the scene as a whole.
I want to touch upon this in like two parts. First part being whether to give me a better way to approach this, right? I think I agree with Valve and ESL with the fact that they haven't, they're not going to be inviting the minus teams directly. It's like to the major. I think that's a good call because obviously some of these teams are going to drop off. Cameron Riders, man, they're a pug team. You don't even know if they're going to be a team by the end of the year, right? And yeah, they might just come back together to play that. But I don't want to see a random pug team just coming in and playing a minor. You don't want to see that happen. So I completely agree with them on that. However, what I would have liked to see was a second minor taking place in which they somehow invite in some way. I don't know the exact format. Maybe if I really do think about it, maybe I could come up with a solution. But a second minor with all the teams who have qualified have kind of like similar, something akin to an upper bracket qualifier sort of thing. Maybe something as dumb as they being in the finals while everyone else plays the minor qualifiers again, and then they get to play against them in a best of 3 or best of 5 or something to decide which team goes through. Something like that. I don't care, right? But I would have liked to see the entire system being played out. But yeah, I get it. It's an investment in time and money, and it's already been done. They don't want to, repeat the entire process all over again. That's fine. Secondly, touching on what Pilly said about teams being demotivated over the fact that they have to compete against the likes of a Tyloo and a VG just one slot. Here's the thing. I've been the biggest I wouldn't say like a critic, but like supporter, so to speak, of the Asian region, where I'm like, hey, you need a lot of opportunities. These teams, they need to have the success stories and all of that. But when the best team in the region, or best teams, I'm talking about Vici and Tyloo, haven't made any substantial impression on anyone in the past couple of years, you got to ask yourself, like, as a TO, I'd probably ask myself, like, is it worth getting 2 or 3 Asian teams on board? Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's the major. You're supposed to give equal opportunities to a lot of teams. At the same time, on the flip side, it is still a celebration of the best in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, right? In the top 30 teams, I don't know if Tyloo's even in the top 30 right now. I think they are.
I don't think that they would be.
I doubt it. I think maybe in the top 40. So let's say
they are number 30 exactly.
Just barely, right? That's it. And then you're talking about, let's look at the top 40 teams, and you're going to be having how many teams in a major? Like 32 teams, right? There's just one Asian team, and that's Tyloo. And maybe I can give a case of Vici, but this is the celebration of the creme de la creme of the fucking Counter-Strike global offensive scene. And unfortunately, you got to draw the line somewhere where like, hey, we'll give you opportunities to perform, but if you can't beat the big dogs in your region, you have no place in a major. I mean, get fucking good. And it's rough. And look, I don't want to like compare regions and compare storylines, but the most easiest example to take a look at are the MIBR guys, right? The Brazilians, when they came out into the scene, the sacrifices they made when they had nothing going on down in South America. There were no orgs who were looking to pick them up. They had nothing going for them, and everyone remembers how players donated money for them to fly down to Europe to play the minors, if I'm not mistaken, or was it a major qualifier? The major qualifier.
Yeah, the crowd fund or whatever.
The crowd fund thing that happened, right? I mean, they went through a very rough time, right? And some of these teams, they're getting paid more than the Brazilians ever did when they started out. So enough with the fucking excuses. Get fucking good and then qualify for it, or else just shut the fuck up and say.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Like, I don't think you can reasonably argue that they should have had another one or two teams from ANZ or from Asia, right? Like, if you would have put 2 spots automatically from ANZ and 2 spots automatically from Asia through to the major, I think that's unrealistic, and I think that's unreasonable. But my major hang up is that, like, and I don't know that there is a way to fix this, but like for Asia in general, the Asia minor is what teams are sort of gunning for. Like, with the exception of like Renegades, Vici, and Tyloo, who want to get to the major, everyone else is like, I want to get to the minor, and like that's my goal right now. And so the minor's just gone, and now they have nothing to work to for basically the entirety of 2020. I see you nodding along, Pili. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, look, I agree with Blair in terms of the major. It's the creme de la creme, exactly what he said, like the top tier of CS. But at the end of the day, I feel like the nature of competition and the nature of CS is just the fact that you do want to compete, and you do want to have opportunities to show that you're good and get yourself in the limelight and have tournaments that you can play at. And I feel like the realistic approach for many of these teams in ANZ and many of these teams in Asia is that they don't expect to be in the major. They know that they're not of that caliber, but it's always just a question of how well can we play against the best teams in the region? How well can we play, when it comes down to those kind of LAN matches that you don't always get the opportunity to play out, that you don't always get the opportunity to show that you yourself are good. And at the end of the day, right, like it's good even for those teams that are going through to those top spots in the major and to represent our region. Look at 100 Thieves. You have Gratis Faction and Liaz. They literally came off the back of playing those minors. They came off the back of developing inside the region. Zedar literally handpicked out of a region that was irrelevant a few years back in CS, and only got into relevance because a bunch of the old dogs came back and tried to make something of it. And he wasn't even, he was one of the newer generation players. If there was no scene there, if there was nothing for these teams to work towards, then that wouldn't have even been an option. And you would have seen Tyloo. Already they're kind of on the precipice, but there's no opportunity to farm down for lower talent. There's no opportunity for, these players to be able to come through and be feeders for the better teams. And at the end of the day, if that's going to be the case, then you're going to see some of these regions fade into obscurity.
Yeah, and I really hope for the Asian scene in general that, like, once coronavirus does eventually sort of blow over, and, like, who knows how long that's going to be, we can only hope that it's going to be maybe 3 months or 4 months or so, and then towards the back end of the year, we're going to be able to see some of these more domestic competitions, for example, like Extremesland and that sort of thing, that gives the team something to kind of play for outside of that one slot at the major. And hopefully that's what's going to happen. But if it doesn't, it's going to be, it's going to be a forgettable year for Asian CS. And like, I feel like every other region seems to be sort of progressing along fine. You've still got Pro League and all that sort of stuff. But Asian CS, in my mind, is being hit the hardest by the situation that we're facing globally. But obviously that's a discussion maybe for greater minds than ours. I want to move us on to what we would have thought would have happened at the Asia Minor. Now, obviously, it's not that relevant because it's not going to end up happening anyway. But we sort of made this thing, and we sort of had a bit of a discussion here anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the little graphic that we've got.
Yeah, the context of this obviously is that we didn't know that it was going to get cancelled, and we've been thinking about doing this for a while. So this is legitimately what we thought would have happened. You know, this wasn't a theory craft of like, oh, whatever is going to happen is going to happen after the fact that it's already been cancelled. Like, we legitimately wanted to have a bit of a chat about this. So have to go back in towards the past tense and think about what we were thinking a few weeks
and
back.
there's a few sort of interesting things here to break down anyway. Now, we've all given our top 8. These are the 8 teams that made it through to the Asia Minor. Look, everyone says Renegades number 1. No questions about that, and I don't think it's really worth touching on. Same for Camel Riders as number 8. We've sort of all gone over that and sort of agreed that there's nothing really there worth talking about. But where I find things pretty interesting here, Blair in particular, right? I want to throw this one your way, right? Because in your rankings, you've given Tyloo number 2, Order number 3, and you've not even given Vici a top 3 place, which means, in your mind, Vici would not have even been the team that would have made it through to their play-ins, which is, I think, pretty crazy, actually, given the way that they've been performing in the lead up to this event, or what would have been this event.
Okay, let's talk about Tyloo, right? The reason I gave this was because the minor was going to be taking place at the end of April, this month, right? And Tyloo would have been right now on LAN playing Pro League. That's a lot of practice against the best in the world right there. That's them growing a lot while Vici would be still back in China. Still, yeah, I'm not saying Vici are a bad team. Absolutely not. Like, and again, these are kind of loose ratings. I still believe that Tyloo would definitely come second over Vici, especially on LAN. They have a tendency whenever they face off against each other that Tyloo do have the edge, have a slight edge. Firepower-wise, Tyloo definitely have the edge, even despite losing Bentet. You're talking about, let's not forget, like somebody, Summer, Attacker, these are not players just scoff at, right? They can, if on a given day they have a very good day, they can just own the server. While we touched upon this in a previous episode as well, for VG Gaming, you have Kaze, you have Jam Young, and then what? Zoking, like I said, like he's either dropping a 30 bomb once every 20 games, or he's going to be like a single digit or like 10 kills, right? Almond, highly inconsistent, never really a big fragger. Advent, we know, can't really frag. He's a really good in-game leader. I really like what he does with the team, but firepower-wise, Tyloo just wins. And on LAN, I feel Tyloo would have the edge, especially considering they'd be having that boot camp in EU for like a couple of months back-to-back. That's why I go with Tyloo number 2. Order for number 3 is because I'm still not convinced at Vici. Yeah, they picked up Jam Young, but how many LANs have we seen them play? Right? We saw them Extremes LAN. That's about it. And then, keeping even LANs aside, how many online tournaments or whatnot have they played? Meanwhile, for Order, yes, they are, on paper, not as well, they haven't achieved as much as the Vici lineup of late. But if you look at the players they have, you have Ricky, you have Steele. I mean, these guys are like your veterans now in Australian scene. Then you have the young guns in the names of Alistair and Jira, and of course Valiance as well. I would put my faith in a team which has a good mix of experience and potential talent, and also who've been playing non-stop. You guys, in Australia have a lot of events that take place all the time. You're playing against not necessarily the best competition, but pretty decent competition, all things considered, right? You're playing against some of the better teams in the region, time and time again. And meanwhile, for Vici, they're the top dogs right now, but they don't even have Tyloo to scrim against. There's no one in Asia for them to really scrim against where they can be really challenged. So I feel like when the minor rolls around, Vici would have stagnated a little bit, and it'd be Order who'd be more ready and raring to go. Tyloo would be definitely, they might not be beating any top 10 team right now, but they'd still be looking much more sharper and much more prepared than Vici would. And of course, Renegades are going to be number 1. So that's my 10,000 IQ.
Yeah, I want to throw this one back to you, Pili, though, because, we've got exactly the same we've got the exact same rankings here. I was even tossing up actually putting Lucid above Order. That would have probably been the only one that I looked at to potentially swap around. But in my mind, Vici, right, towards the end of last year, we were very, very keen on Vici, you and I. And I think that came from a lot of the games that we cast from them online when we were watching them in, I can't even remember what tournaments it was. It must have been some sort of qualifiers or Pro League. Yeah, something. And they were looking so good. And then it came to Extreme Zone. So this is where my one little hang up was, right? When they played Extreme Zone in that grand final, they just looked like dog shit. But even playing at Extreme Zone up until the grand final, they looked like the better team than Tyloo.
Exactly right. We predicted them to actually beat Tyloo in that Extreme Slam grand final, which is, at the end of the day, it basically means what Blair's saying is founded in some decent reasoning. At the end of the day, like you're saying, Vici, they have notoriously inconsistent players with a lot of their talent. And that's true. And at the end of the day, a lot of the times in these domestic matchups, when it comes down to them versus Tyloo, half the time, Tyloo's just got the firepower and the experience and the more quality players to be able to win those games. And I feel like there's some kind of mental blockage for Vici when it comes to that matchup from time to time, especially when the pressure gets on. Because at the end of the day, this Vici team, I believe they're a better team. Across the board, they play better CS than Tyloo do. I actually kind of hate the fact that Tyloo just time and time again manages to come through and win these competitions, because I do actually believe in the Vici team. And I think that they have, a good structured system. And I believe actually, someone like Advent, the approach that he has to the game is really good, and he deserves some opportunities to show that overseas, which we saw a little bit of at Katowice. But apart from that, Vici's opportunities have been few and far between. So, it's not too crazy what Blair's gone for there. At the end of the day, though, I feel like I would be hoping that Vici would be coming out over the top of a team like Tyloo. Personally, I think Renegades and Vici are the most consistent two to actually come through in those top two spots at the end of the day, just from watching their games as a whole. The problem with this Asian region is that the matchups are crazy sometimes. Like, you'll see a team like Tiger for some reason just smash somebody else out of nowhere that you didn't expect to happen. So that's difficult. At the end of the day, the reason why I have a team like Tyloo in third is exactly what Blair said. I thought about Tyloo. Do I rate Tyloo? What do I think of their team at the moment? I don't think they're that good. And I don't really like their team at all. And I don't like the inclusion of Zeta. But exactly what Blair said, they're the only team playing international CS at the moment. They've got the Pro League spot. Vici weren't able to actually go to the tournaments that they qualified for and were replaced by Tyloo, which is, at the end of the day, fucking disappointing. It's really shit for Vici. But, at the end of the day, Tyloo's going to soak up more of that experience, and that's just going to it's going to catapult them further ahead. So in my mind, like 3 to 6 in this minor is a fucking toss up. Like, it's literally just matchup dependent. It's on the day. It's how the bracket's going to be coming down to it. And that's what would have made this minor so crazy, but we're never even going to get to see it. It would have been such an exciting
and I'm really
tournament.
disappointed that this minor doesn't exist, because like this was the one that I started to feel like, you know what, we might actually get a really, really good competitive Asia minor. Again, like obviously Renegades should in theory be head and shoulders above everyone else, but Vici and Tyloo pretty close at the moment. There's obviously, as you can see, a debate between the two and between the three of us as to which of those two would be taking that second spot. And then there's kind of also like Order's kind of also sort of sitting in there. Even in Blair's ranking, he's put Order in number 3, and I can kind of agree with that. Like, I can see a world where Order, if Alistair's performing well, if Ricky's performing well, you got these two guys that could potentially come into the minor and kind of dumpster everyone. If they're having good days, that's a team that definitely could potentially even beat Vici, right? I don't know that that's going to happen 9 times out of 10. Maybe it happens 1 time out of 10. But I feel like Order is a team that kind of has that X factor. And I want to throw this one back to you, Pilly. Sorry, Blair, you're getting kicked out a little bit. But for you, Pilly, right?
No.
We saw them play ANZ champs, and like Alistair just did not show up in that grand final at all. But if Alistair shows up for this Order roster, like, it's a totally different looking team.
Yeah, it is. They have a major couple different sources of firepower. The massive question marks that come in for me is about the leadership of the team. Jairai is a player that he can actually be pretty impactful as an individual. But I feel like Order, a lot of the games that I watch them, where things start to break down for them is the T sides. When they get put under the pump a little bit, where they have to come up with some creative solutions, their T sides could really start to lack when you start to get a little bit deeper in the playbook, even though they do have, Tux as a coach. But even with Tux as a coach, I felt like a team like Chiefs, they had some tactics, they had some strats, but they were definitely a looser team as well, and they were playing more intuitively on field. So even that, having Tux as a coach doesn't really strike me as, going to be some greatly tactical team, which really does worry me when you're heading into a tournament like the minor, when your leadership seems like a bit how you're going, even when you have some veterans on the team. I feel like you can wind up in some situations where you have to pull yourself through a really difficult T side, or you have a team that really tests you, like comes out of nowhere that you weren't expecting to, like especially in an Asian minor like Tiger or something, and you find yourself 8-0 down when you didn't expect to be. Those are the kind of situations where you need that strong fundamental leadership and you need the team cohesion to be able to bring you through a tough game like that. And that's where I really feel like Order hasn't had the opportunity or the time together to be able to show that kind of resilience. You know, they haven't really been tested, and when they have, exactly like you said in the ANZ Champs finals, they didn't really recover very much. But I feel like that at the same time was a bit of an outlier due to the individual performances not really being up to scratch from Alistair and Ustillo.
Unfortunately, it seems like we might not get to see them have that opportunity either, obviously, with this new RMR system. But let's dive a little bit further down those lists now and talk more towards the likes of Lucid, Tiger, Marzalai. And again, for me, this was a little bit of a toss-up. I do have quite a degree of faith in the Thai region. That's why I've got Lucid as my 5th. But I can see that being a roster that could kind of fall apart. You know, if something goes wrong for them, it sort of all goes to shit. You got 2 Koreans, you got 3 Thai players. Who knows what could happen? At the moment, they're playing well, but that doesn't mean that in a month or in even 2 or 3 weeks' time, they're not going to be playing well, or they are going to be playing well. So Blair, you've got them all the way down at 7, and that's obviously a big change up from what Pili and I have got here. But is that just because you don't have any faith? I know we were sort of talking about this a little bit off air, and you were sort of saying, like, you don't think that the Thai teams do particularly well on LAN.
Yeah, they don't. And let's remember, or at least I believe that Lucid Dream getting the slot, I wouldn't call it a fluke. They obviously beat the other teams in the region, but there's not much you can really gauge from the domestic matchups you have in Thailand, right? It's like Beyond, or back in the day they were called Alpha Red, and then you had Lucid, you had the Signature, all these guys. They just kept beating each other, and it was always hard to gauge who had a better team. I feel Beyond are the best team in Thailand right now, and they're also the best team in SCA at the moment, right? But bear in mind, we were casting Beyond a few months back, like 4 months back on LAN, when they were called Alpha Red. They only had one player different from then. They had Fox J or Fox Z instead of QQ God, right? Now, they came, I think, like the bottom 4 in a 16-team tournament on LAN against only Asian teams. They were shit. And but they was pretty goddamn good online. They were looking so sharp back then, right? And I got to go with what I know. I mean, they struggled against Asian teams, not just even Tyloo and Vici, but they struggled against the rest of them. And now, fine, they lose to Lucid, and Lucid themselves, like you said, they have the 2 Korean players coming in. There are going to be communication issues. It's still like, trying to work out the roster and whatnot. I think they're just going to crumble on LAN against the Mongolians. Forget Renegades, Vici, Tyloo, and Order, but even against the Mongolians, I think they're just going to steamroll them. I think this is as far as they're going to go. At least, I would have given a little bit more faith in Beyond if they'd made it, but Lucid Dream.
So the weird thing here for me is, like, you talk about when they were Alpha Red, and I want to throw it back even a little bit further, and maybe this isn't so relevant anymore, but do you remember Cobex, right? They beat Greyhound on LAN.
It was a fluke. It was a fluke.
Yeah, but then you go to Extremes LAN. They literally got smashed by August, who are a relatively new team, twice.
That was a fluke. That was a fluke,
best of 3.
See how easy it is?
Okay. Yeah. So
here's the thing, right? When it comes to that Cobex win, I'm sure you remember as well, Jordan, was how they looked so good, but it was also like a Greyhound.
I think Greyhound
underperformed. Scared. They really underperformed. I'm taking nothing away from Alpha Red. They had some really nice protocols. The CD side in the overpass map was really cool to watch, but Greyhound overperformed. They weren't thinking straight. We spoke to them as well at the after party, and they were like, "Yeah, man, we were just not in the heads. We don't know what went wrong." And fair enough, right? But then you look how they got dismantled by MVP PK after that in the finals, right? And that's another Asian team who is not there anymore. And now the Extreme Sun performance was the biggest telltale for me that this team doesn't really have it. Yet they're still online kings, and SCA, they just smash everyone. The only teams they lose to are their countrymen, right? So it's kind of not fair to judge Lucid Dream because we're using Alpha Red / Beyond as an example, but they do play in the same region, they play in the same country, they play against each other all the time. And I think that's fair enough because there's not much other data to work with. And historically speaking, the Thai teams, they made it to multiple LAN events, multiple minors in the past. And I have to deal with the information I have at hand. And the information I have at hand is they have sucked on LAN. So I'm sorry. I don't see them winning over even the Mongolians because the Mongolians have shown that they can play on LAN. A long time ago,
that's
but
the thing for me. Like, and I'll throw this onto you, Pili. But my the reasoning for me putting Lucid over Tiger and Marzalai is like at least Lucid has some results online. I don't know that Tiger and Marzalai have kind of hit the level for me to say that I think they're going to be strong teams right now. I think they're the sort of teams, at least particularly in the case of Tiger, right? This is a team that I'm going to be watching for 2020 and hopefully into 2021. I think they can go really far, but the results versus the roster that they've got have been disappointing, in my opinion.
I think it doubles for the Mongolian teams as well, is the problem. Like, you're looking at the results of Tiger, Marzalai, D13 within their own little sub-region. They're all teams that beat each other as well, and it's not essentially clear who's going to be the best team when it comes down to a LAN tournament. It's the exact same thing as you'd say with the Thai scene as well. A team like Lucid Dream, they've always had like some kind of weird matchup advantage over Alpha Red when Alpha Red was the better team almost every time. Like CBBK, I don't know what's going on in that guy's brain, but he has got Alpha Red worked out like so perfectly. You put anybody on his team, like get his grandma in there, like get whoever, he will suck. Like, he will never beat anybody else, but he will be able to put together any team. Like, they get Blair on his team and he could beat Alpha Red for some reason. It makes no sense. Like, every single time Lucid Dream's able to beat Alpha Red, and that is a massive advantage to have. Like, you can beat the other good team in your region consistently, and you're going to get those international opportunities. And that's what we saw from Lucid Dream. They went and qualified for that DreamHack event like a while back, that Dallas event, over some of the other Asian teams and stuff like that. They were able to make their way there. They had good results, like decent results in Pro League as well. Like, they were able to upset some of the Chinese teams. They were able to beat Alpha Red, all that kind of stuff. Like, for some reason, I don't know, like Lucid Dream just have that matchup advantage, but they never seem to be able to convert that into overseas, like international success. So, it's pretty difficult to sort of formulate a way to sort of structure who you think is going to perform well at this tournament. I just feel like, a team like Lucid Dream, I put them as my number 5, and then Tiger and Marzalai below them. I think, like, exactly what I said before, 3 to 7 in this tournament, like Camel Riders, I don't even want to talk about that, but 3 to 7 in this tournament. We'll give you a chance, Blair. Honestly, with that facial hair you've got going on right now, you could probably be a member of the Camel Riders yourself, mate. But
thank you.
In all honesty, like 3 to 7 in this tournament is such a fucking toss-up. It's ridiculous. Like, you could see Marzalai beat Tiger just due to have that domestic matchup. And even if they weren't going to beat any of the other teams, if they got that side of the bracket, they could have fucking made it further in this tournament than some of the other teams. So same thing with the Vici Tyloo matchup. Like, if you saw that early on, and Vici actually got their shit together on LAN, like, they might be able to beat Tyloo, and then they would lose to some other team that they shouldn't have lost to. Like, it's so matchup dependent when it comes down to this minor. And I do think Lucid Dream is just a fucking impossible team to predict at this point, because I don't feel like they've necessarily been pushed that much online. And at the end of the day, this is the teams that they beat with this lineup. This is the only data we have to go off. They beat Paper Rex. They beat the other side of Boot, which is the HD team, Huatsai. They had 2 games against Beyond, which we already know that's a domestic matchup. Who the fuck knows? And then they played Tiger and D13, who are like inconsistent Mongolian teams. And that's all you have to go off for them going into this event. It's what the fuck?
And bear in mind, when you're playing D13 and when you're playing Mongolian guys, again, this is based off historical information I've had. The ping can really play a big spoil. But depending on what platform you're playing on, depending on which tournament you're playing on, either going to wind up playing a Singaporean service where the Mongolians have like over 100 ping and the Thai guys have like 10 or 20, or you're going to be playing in Hong Kong where even there the Mongolians usually have like fuck all ping, as far as I'm aware, right? So whenever it's going to be an East Asian team or a Chinese team playing against a SCA team, there's a big caveat that the ping issue is not just like online games like compared to NA or EU. This is like ridiculous differences in the ping. So you've got to have that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the top three, like, fair enough. There's a fair, interesting discussion. But once you get past that, once you get to sort of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it kind of gets a little bit like, it could kind of go either way.
Listen, dude. Okay, here's the thing. Lucid Dream played the DreamHack New Delhi Invitational late last year. I think it was in December. They had a few okay teams. They had HR. They had. Wait, let me just take a quick look here. That HR. They had.
It's not the same lineup anymore, though. Like,
but they had the three core players are still there, and they lost a map convincingly to Yalla Esports, and then they barely scraped an overtime win over them in the second map. And Yalla Esports is a Middle Eastern team consisting of it's a mixed team. It's like people from all over the place. They have a couple of players from, I do believe, from Lebanon. They have a player from Algeria, from Jordan, from, I think that's from Tunisia.
Yeah.
You should be beating this team with eyes closed, right? And this is on LAN, mind you. They came bottom, I think, like 5th or 6th in a 6-team tournament, and they also lost very convincingly to HR, who are no longer the HR of old. This is a pretty shit HR, and now they're not even there anymore, right? And it's just like 3 or 4 months back. So again, it proves my point. Thai teams in general just suck on LAN. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm sorry, Pilly.
Unfortunately,
I like looking sad.
We will never know,
true.
will we?
Yeah.
We will never know.
There's no data that goes against you, Blair. Thai teams just suck balls on LAN. It's sad to admit, but that's the way it is.
So anyway,
Tiger Marzalai.
Okay, you want to talk about Marzalai and Tiger? You've got Marzalai above Tiger.
I fucked that one up. My bad. I was confused with the names. I thought Marzalai had Dobu.
So you do really think Tiger's better than Marzalai?
I do believe Tiger's still going to be better than them. Yes, Marzalai managed to beat them, but bear in mind, this Marzalai lineup came out of nowhere again. Zilkenberg and Machine Gun teaming up back after God knows how many years. They had some old... I think the Sugu is in the lineup as well, and there's a mistake in there. Let me just quickly check.
You're right. Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
Tiger's on Marzalai. So, sorry. Sogu's on Marzalai. So Tiger's got Dobu, NCL, Cabal, Urcast, and 9. And then Marzalai's got Sogu, the core 3 is Sogu, Machine Gun, and Zilk.
Wasn't News on the Mongols at one point, like with those guys?
I think the entire Mongolia was in
No, but I mean like the good Mongols in 2015. Was News not on that at some point? Or like...
No. It was NCL, it was Sugu.
Cabal, I'm pretty sure Cabal was in there.
Zilk.
Came in later.
Cabal was there 100%.
Or something.
So...
Yeah, News is a newer sort of player, I think. Like he's a youngster, same. So yeah,
I think it came in after Machine Gun left or Zilk left with one of those guys, but I never believe he played with the core lineup, right? Anyway, looking at the names here, right? Keeping aside Prism and Nuas, who are kind of new guys for Marzalai, and then for Tiger, it's 9. But man for man, Dobu, NCL, Cabal, Urki. Urcast, we all know who he is. We all know what he's achieved so far. There's not much you can say about this guy. Dobu is, in my eyes, the best Mongolian player who is not Urcast. Very smart kid. He speaks English very, very well. Something that most Mongolian players have struggled with as well, which means that he is someone who can easily be picked up by an international lineup if needs be. Smart player. That's a rare, not just a shot.
I mean, a while back, I think around Extremes Land time, you were advocating to put him on Tai Lu or some shit like that, or Vici. I can't remember which one of those it was.
Yeah, I wanted to see, like, there is a potential to have an English-speaking top-tier mixed team in Asia, right? Like, think about it. Xcure, Dobu, Kaze, Bentet, and throw in any random Freeman. He can speak English. Boom, there we go. That's a team that could beat almost anyone.
Don't give away the secrets, Blair. We
anyway,
want to... I'm going to shelve this one and let's make a whole discussion on this in a later topic, because in a later episode, because I think that's actually a really interesting topic. But continue with your rant about Mongolian CS.
Yeah. All right. So NCL, Cabal, like these are the two big names apart from Machine and Zilk, who always impressed me, even back in the day when they're playing with the Mongols and were just like steamrolling Voxem or poor Chad, and all those guys. Right? They were really solid. And yes, Zilkenberg and Machine Gun kind of outshone them because they were much more flashier, had those big 30 bomb games and the big ones. But NCL Cabal have always been good, always consistent. LAN and online as well. So this is a team who, despite losing Marzalai, I have a very strong feeling when they played the minors, they would have had a very good run. In fact, I think they would definitely give even a Tyloo and a Vici a run for their money. And even Order would struggle against them because Urcast, bear in mind, he played in Oceania for a long time. He knows Order pretty well. Maybe not his current lineup, but he knows the tendencies of many of the players and whatnot, how things work, how the meta might be in ANZ. Even though it's a few months have elapsed, some things will not. The fundamental things won't really change. So I think Tiger would be a really dangerous force here. But then again, the caveat remains that they haven't impressed so far online. I'm still theory crafting here. Online, they've still struggled quite a bit. They shouldn't be, just looking at the firepower and the brains in this team. They should be winning very convincingly. And for Marzalai, though, the reason I'm putting them in, in number 6 is the fact that, yeah, we haven't seen these guys play in a long time, but I still believe they have the firepower. They still have the raw skill going for them. They're still beasts, very, very unpredictable animals, and they have shown, albeit a long time ago, that they can face off with some of the best in the region on LAN
Yeah, I mean, even in Extremes LAN, do you guys remember how they went out at Extremes LAN, August? They were playing Tyloo, and they were ahead on 2 of those maps. They played Trained Inferno against Tyloo, and they looked like they're about to fucking take that series. And Tyloo's the team that won the whole event. They lost 16-14, 16-11 on Trained Inferno to Tyloo. Like, they could have fucking won both of those games, I remember.
I think there's no question that Tiger is a team that looks like it will be good. That's it, though. That right now, that's all it is. They're on paper, they look like a good team, but I don't know that the results are necessarily there just yet. So I really, really hope that they're not going to be one of those teams that we talk about a year down the track and say, well, what could have been from that team, because it's at the moment seeming like that. I don't know how long they've been together, at least the core, for maybe 6 months now, since August 9th, or even potentially longer. And they're still not quite hitting their stride, I don't feel.
Take a quick look here. I see the first game as September.
Yeah, so it'd be just over 6 months.
Yeah, you got to have Tiger and August are separate pages. It's actually what pisses me off most about HLTV. You have to, they're literally the same team or very similar team, and you have to change.
11th September was the first recorded match on HLTV, which makes it 6 months.
A bit over 6 months, 7 months.
Yeah, 6 months. Bit over 6 months. 6.5. Yeah, fine. 6 to 7 months. Yeah, they've had enough time, and I felt like this minor would have been the time they really broke through, right? They'd catch a lot of people by surprise. They'd be looking really good. And yeah, but you still have to go with the data you have. You can hypothesize as much as you want, but the facts remain the facts that they have struggled online, and they haven't really qualified for many lands, so you still can't rank them higher than a top 4, at least in my list.
Fair enough. I would definitely not put them above a top 4, but I think that they can challenge the top 4. That's the weird thing, isn't it? You wouldn't rank them there because they haven't got the results yet. But on paper, they look like a team that would be able to really, maybe even take that 3rd spot.
I've got Tiger as the 6th on my list. There's a world where if this Asia Minor plays out, and they really turn up to it, all guns blazing, actually in good form, very, very prepared. You could see them even make it to 2nd place or something like that if they're winning some close maps over a Vici or a Tyloo. They've already shown that they, on land, can put themselves in position to win series against the best teams in the region. So if they were actually able to show up, then I really think that they could have an opportunity to make it really deep in the minor. At the end of the day, though, just looking at the fact that they haven't become the dominant team in the Mongolian region, it really sort of shakes my faith as to how well they're performing heading into this minor.
Fair enough. Yeah, look, I think we'd love to see a bit more from Tiger, a little bit more from Marzalai. We would have loved to have seen the Asian Minor. Actually, before we move on to the RMR system, I want to bring in this new segment. I don't know if you guys even know that this is a thing, but I'm going to throw this graphic up. And this is our averages on the right underneath Blair, which has then been averaged against what the community sort of said. And I put a tweet out a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, and I sort of said, if you guys saw the minor happening, what did you think would actually end up being the case? So shout outs to Sergio G, Only Here to Ratio, Nick Hathy, Carbon Dogma, Dreamslayer28, and Conky for hitting us up with some of these replies. And that is what the community thinks there on the left, and it's basically the exact same thing as what we've kind of gone for here. The only exception being Lucid Dream. So I don't know. Do you reckon there's just a bit of an Aussie bias kind of showing through on this podcast, Billy?
I don't think so.
Not even Aussie.
Yeah, but you're talking with two Aussies. You're like basically the third Aussie on this podcast.
Yeah, maybe we need honestly, if you wanted to make it a little bit fairer, then maybe we should have had like Nick's as the fourth and just split it down the middle, just two a piece, because I'm sure Nick would have.
He would put Paper Rex as number one, even though they're not competing in the tournament.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was about to say. If you had Paper Rex or some shit here, he'd probably put them as number one. Absolute piece of shit. But at the end of the day, there's not really much you could do. You could do about that, and I don't think it's necessarily biased to say that a team like Order, it's a lot easier to predict for them when they have such experienced and veteran players on their roster. Like, it's a little bit of a different thing if you had someone like Chiefs go to the Asia Minor. I would probably be like, yeah, maybe fifth, sixth or something like that. They don't have the experience to be able to, take it to some of the better teams in Asia when it comes down to a high pressure tournament like this. But if you got Yustillo and Ricky on your team, like, how many minors has Yustillo played in now? Like, how many minors has this guy won? This is literally like his stomping ground.
I think he's played like five or six. I could be wrong.
It's insane.
Yeah. Even Ricky as well, right? I mean, that's why I'm going to give Order the edge here, and that's why I put them in my top three. To be very honest, like, I really feel that they could. I think it's still a toss between Vici and Order, but they definitely have that edge, so to speak, mentally. I'm still surprised over the fact that people are sleeping on Tiger.
Yeah,
a lot of people. I know the stats don't show it, and the fact that Lucid's always there on HLTV because they're playing so many SCA events, kind of like, I feel, gives them this presence into people's minds where they're like, oh yeah, this team's there all the time playing tournaments and winning stuff. They must be really good. But I think the place a little too high.
How about this? Let's move on to our next segment then, which is the RMR system. Obviously, this is what actually matters, right? We were talking a little bit before about, obviously, the Asian Minor. All of that doesn't really matter. All of that is just theory crafting. But this now is the actual system that is going to qualify teams through to the Minor. And in the context of these rankings, which we've put in, this is what we think is going to be the case in, say, the next 4 or 5 months before the Minor actually ends up being a thing. And these are basically what we think is going to be the teams to qualify through to the Major, essentially, from the RMR system. So since we're talking about Asia a little bit more, and we were talking about Tiger, let's touch on the Asian side of things first. Pili and I have still kind of gone with Vici. Again, Vici fanboys. Tyloo for you, to Blair, and I think we kind of understand why those reasons are the case. But you've actually still got Vici above Tiger. So, you seem like you're really, really keen on this Tiger roster and really hyped up about what they're going to be able to do. But they're still not, at least in what you're saying here, going to be able to get the better of Vici.
Yeah, I don't think it's good enough. I think Vici and Tyloo are just too high up. Again, it's a very, very, very thin line separating Tyloo and Vici. Like, if I woke up tomorrow on the wrong side of the bed or right side of the bed, depending on who you ask, I'd probably put Vici over Tyloo. Right? It's all about hypothesizing right now. They are, on paper, I completely agree with Pili. They play the best Counter-Strike in Asia. No doubts about that. I still feel Tyloo, however, have the little edge because they have the firepower, and especially in these Asian matchups, it's not how good a style of Counter-Strike you play. It's more about how you're feeling on that day and how you know tendencies of your opponents and whatnot. And Tyloo playing in EU right now, and they're going to be stuck there for a while, mind you, with the entire Corona thing. They're not flying back anytime soon, unless I'm very much mistaken here. So they're going to be stuck there practicing against some of the best teams on the planet. So by the time this thing rolls around, I think I'm hoping to see Tyloo be playing at a much higher level than what you're seeing right now. I'm seeing signs of it from some of the games in Pro League, some little bit of hints of what they're planning towards, and given some time, I'm hoping that it kind of comes to fruition. Vici, they're going to continue what they're doing. I'm thinking they're going to plateau right now. There's not that many events taking place in Asia right now, apart from a few online stuff here and there. But even their plateau is levels ahead of everyone else, levels ahead of Lucid and Tiger and all the Chinese teams. So I think the number 1 and number 2 spot, at least for me, and for you guys as well, you put Vici number 1 and Tyloo number 2, but I think it's kind of obvious that these two teams are going to be on top. Tiger, I feel, Tiger's a long shot for me. I feel that they have the the pedigree, they have the players to really work with, and unless something really goes wrong in the next few months, I think they will start to rise up. This minor should have been their moment, I feel like, to really break out, but I still feel they're going to be rising up. The Lucid Dream ad, I'm just throwing it in because they're the ones who are going to get invited because they did qualify. But I wouldn't be surprised if Beyond managed to make it
Yeah, and I
replace
think
them
before
for
we
that
get
match.
too far into the discussion with you, Pili, it is important to note that the way that this system works is that for Asia, it's an 8-team qualification, of which 5 of the teams are invited. So Tyloo, Vici, Marzalai, Tiger, and Lucid all get invited because they were the teams that qualified through to the minor. There's supposed to be 3 other teams. We don't know who they're going to be. We don't know how they're going to qualify. And logistically speaking, we don't know how this whole tournament is going to work with all of these teams all over the place. So there are those sort of caveats to kind of think about a little bit when you're looking at this kind of a ranking. Again, now touching on yours, Pili, you've obviously put Beyond in there, which in your mind would mean they have to qualify for this to begin with. And then in the long term, they have to also be better than all of those other teams that made it to the minor here. So again, we're talking about this in the context of it potentially not even ending until maybe September, October time. But obviously that kind of makes sense, right? If you consider the Thai region to be one of the better regions within Asia, they should be able to qualify and they should be able to have a good long-term run.
Yeah, so this top 4 is Pili's Fantasyland, where I hope that the things that my inherent biases and the things that I wish to be true about CS are true, and that Tyloo, I don't like the approach that they're taking at the moment, and I think it's going to be it's massive question marks for the future, and the only thing that's keeping them in relevance is the quality of their players and the quality of their practice. Whereas I think everything else goes the way of Vici, and I really want to see them, as they have done a couple of times in a couple of qualifiers, step up and beat Tyloo and actually take that number 1 spot in China. And as far as I understand it, you're talking about a system where you have multiple tournaments that are online that you're going to have rankings points for and opportunities for teams to actually, prove themselves and get themselves those points to be able to go through to the major. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, so in that world, I want to see Vici be a better team online than Tyloo. Hide some of this bullshit in terms of losing that matchup. And need I say anything else? You just said online tournaments, in Asia. Thailand number 1, man. You're gonna have Lucid Dream and Beyond come through and absolutely smash a bunch of teams that they would lose to on LAN probably, but at the end of the day, online CS.
And the interesting thing for me as well is
He's
like
got a point.
we only know of one tournament that is actually going to be as part of this RMR system, which is the one that ESL announced when this whole thing was announced. And even then, like, we don't know what is it going to be. Double elim? Is it going to be single elim? The only thing we really know is that it's 8 teams and there's 1 slot that goes for the Asia region. So that seems like it's got you kind of thinking a little bit, Blair, right? Some of what Pili's just said there. Do you have any response?
I think he kind of got me to checkmate there. It is happening online, right? So
yeah, on LAN, I'm the same as Blair. I'd be looking at the Mongolians to be a lot more dangerous, but online, I have no faith in their performance.
Yeah, that's true. I think if we could again, is it going to be online? Is 100%?
It has to be
Because from
online.
what I read
It has
about
to be online.
Is it
Mate,
though? Because I've read
you-
read that the TOs. What?
Are you
Is he
telling
saying
me
that?
they're going to
Like,
get Chinese teams and Thai teams and Mongolian teams and wherever else the fuck teams are coming from all together
Do you know how much money the Chinese TOs have?
in this day and age?
Look, all I'm saying is that sounds like
they
an
just
Asian
need
minor.
It does.
They just need to pitch to Valve that, hey, we have this LAN taking place, and we have a lot of money, and we're going to invite all the top teams who qualified and have an open qualifier. Valve's
How
going to
can
be like, yeah,
there be a
fuck yeah,
LAN
do
right
it.
now, though?
Because Valve said, no, not right now, but
Well,
later on.
optimistic,
Unless the world
I'd say
comes to an
there,
end.
to be honest. Like,
I'm being optimistic. All right, but I do agree with Pili. It's highly likely it's going to be online, and if that's the case, man, like, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Pili's wet dream comes true. It's going to be Lucid and Beyond, just like jizzing all over everyone's faces, apart from Vici and Tyler.
well, that's basically just the podcast summed up in 2 sentences.
There you go. Me, inherent biases, wishing that Vici was better than they are, and just wanting, Advent to get a tiny little bit of credit for like literally years of hard work, just slumming away, getting bashed by somebody.
That's the thing. That's the thing, right? Vichi's style really would work against an international team like EU teams, NA teams, right? Because he has a more cerebral approach to the game, and it's cool. It can work, and especially when you have Kaze and jamming in the right spots. But in a domestic competition, that doesn't work. How can you have strats against teams who don't give a fuck?
I disagree.
Somebody's going to push Banana 15 rounds in a row, and Admin's going to be losing on whatever hair he has remaining, sitting at T-Spawn wondering, why is he doing this? This doesn't make sense. He should not be doing this.
I think the interesting thing about that is, I think when it comes down to like a Lucid Dream and a Tai Lu, you're correct, because like I feel like at some point they are sort of similar teams in the way that they play. Sometimes they're a little bit more on the loose side, and they have some simpler tactics that they mix in. I think that Vici actually has a pretty good style against a lot of the other teams that try to play some more proper CS, and the overall consistency of their game and their structure brings them through a lot of these competitions, although they can definitely be tested by some of these other teams. But the overall, across the board, across the majority of competitions, they're going to be able to put themselves in the right position, and a lot of the time they do end up qualifying. At the end of the day, Vici is just used to this, and you see them come through so many Chinese qualifiers against like Invictus and like GG How and like all these teams that just hold W at them. Like, it's got to be traumatizing, man.
I want to get your thoughts on this one, Blair, because again, under the assumption that this ends up happening online, logistically, this has to be a nightmare, right? There is no way that you can have all of these teams playing against each other in a fair environment.
No, you can't. If the Camel Riders guys, it's impossible. It is impossible. Even when you take out Australia out of the equation, you're talking about China, Mongolia. It's doable. It's not going to be fair. It's doable. But for Camel Riders, I feel bad for these guys because they're not even from UAE. They're from like the rest of the GCC. And I already went on a rant in the previous, in episode number 1 of Geographically Speaking, where I said how if you're from the other part of the Middle East, the rest of the Middle East, the MENA region, you're going to ping terribly to Dubai. They're going to ping over like 300 to 400 to Singapore, or even India for that matter, which could be a middle ground server. So Camel Riders have just got fucked.
Yeah,
Middle East just got fucked, right?
We've even seen like some of the Korean guys when it comes to EPL or like a Boot Dreamscape or something like that have such severe ping issues that they haven't wanted to play out a game, or they haven't found the right VPN, or just the internet's inconsistent enough on that day for them to not be able to play their proper CS. And half the time, that's why we see such inconsistent results. I've literally been in the green room from time to time, getting hyped, getting ready to cast a match. I'm not going to name any names, and seen or heard players messaging an admin and being like, are we allowed to forfeit? Like, what happens if you forfeit? And the admin being like, you will be banned from playing Pro League. And then them being like, okay,
I guess we're playing, but we don't want to.
I guess we're playing on 150 ping. Yeah, so
I'll tell you how fucked it is, right? I don't know if it's still the case, but like a year and a half back, a couple of years back, which is not a long time ago, in Singapore, depending on which ISP you're using, which provider you're using, and the two main ones over there, you'd either ping single digit to a Singaporean server or you ping 250 in your own country, a first world country. Singapore's a first world country. It's a small city state. And even there, that's how scuffed it is. And like Billy said, on any given day, you might ping like really good, it might ping really bad. You might wake up in the morning, everything's ready, you're ready to go play the tournament of your life, and boom, the internet decides to just fuck you over. So that's going to be there. And of course, the fact that distance is a major factor. The Middle Eastern region just got fucked. Camel Riders, whoever else qualifies in the Middle East is going to have a very rough time. And if this anti-travel thing continues, and I'm assuming even when the quarantine's going to end and once we get out of an entire COVID-19 nightmare, travel is still going to be a problem, right? People are not going to be traveling that often. They don't want, it's going to still be some remnants of what's happening right now. So maybe a team like Nasser Yalla, who have sponsorship, they can potentially fly down to Singapore and play this qualifier. They've done that in the past. Camel Riders, I doubt it's an Oracle Camel Riders. I don't think they have the money to fly all 5 of them down to Singapore and stay in a hotel for like a week.
And Singapore's not cheap either.
So for teams
like Singapore's a pretty expensive place.
Singapore's not, okay, fine.
Maybe Malaysia, right?
Maybe
Yeah, Malaysia would be the way.
Or in Thailand. Thailand's great, a great place to be in, right, Billy? But the thing is, not every team's going to afford that, right? And the minor is an opportunity for teams like a Camel Riders to make it out of obscurity, form a team, and just show that, hey, we can hang with the best in our region, give us an opportunity, give us a shot. That's what the minor system was made for. And unfortunately, if this goes the way it's going to be, the way it's been planned out by ESL and Valve for this, for the next major, for the upcoming major, few teams are going to get fucked real bad.
Yeah, so luckily for ANZ, at least, as we start to shift in that direction, that won't obviously be a problem. Now, it's pretty hard right now, I think, to say where ANZ Counter-Strike is going to be in 6 months' time, because, like, sure, we've just seen Avant 3-1 Order on LAN, and that was a pretty comprehensive victory, but, like, you look at that Order roster and you think, man, that could be a really good roster. Who knows what the fuck's going on with Chiefs? So let's throw this your way, Pilly. You've obviously kept Chiefs in your ranking, in your top 4. Why do you keep Chiefs there when they weren't even able to qualify for ANZ Champs Finals?
Well, it's a decent question, because when you asked for our rankings or whatever, I initially didn't put Chiefs in at the time of asking a couple of days ago, after Champs happened, because Ground Zeroes recently outperformed them. But a couple of months down the line, I feel like, these teams might shift around. They might change players here or there. There's a big opportunity and a big potential for a couple of these teams to change around a little bit. Obviously, we've seen a couple of shuffles. That's how the Savant team came together. It was a mix between Chiefs as well as the old Avant roster sort of merging together. So I'm not sure how much a team like Order's necessarily going to change. Renegades is obviously not going to change. I think there's big potential for a team like Chiefs to change. Avant are playing pretty well at the moment, so I wouldn't expect them to change. But at the end of the day, I think it's a question of, like, the quality of players that you have and the potential of those players. And I think that if you look at a team like the Chiefs and then you look at the rest of the field in Australia, there isn't really a good enough argument that you can say that another team has as many pieces that are capable of being able to place in the top 4 in the region as the Chiefs do at the moment, so many months down the line.
And this is sort of why I've kept Chiefs in my top 4 as well, is that, like, even if they do make 1 or 2 changes, like, again, assuming the core still exists, I see them only being able to get better from where they are right now. And even now, like, even without being able to qualify for ANZ Champs, I still think they're a top 4 contender. They just need to kind of go through the motions a little bit better than what they did in those couple of online matches in Split 2, which looked, to be fair, really bad. But we've seen so much good Counter-Strike from Chiefs prior to that I do still give them a little bit of credit there, and I still give them a little bit of props, and I still have a little bit of hope for that Chiefs roster. But what about you, Blair? Obviously, you've got a little bit of a different one for us here. You put Chiefs above Avant. Do you just have some faith maybe in a little bit of new blood coming through the ANZ scene?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, the third, fourth position is more of a toss-up. I had to pick one. I just picked Chiefs over there because I just want to put a little bit of faith, like you said, in the new blood. But I wouldn't be surprised if Avant just came out on top. They've been looking pretty decent based on the results. I think it's a big toss.
Yeah.
I'll be very honest. It's kind of like, for me, it's personally like Tiger and Mars Life for that matter, right? Either two teams can come out on top on any given day. But if you look at his listing, for me personally, since only one team's going to go through,
you don't really care.
I'm just going to be applying. I don't really care. I'm just going to be applying thought in the top 2. Renegades definitely should win this one. I think the Oceanic qualifier is going to be very clear cut. The Renegades should win this. If they don't, it's going to be a big shock. You don't have any ping disadvantage. You have everything going for you guys. You should have this one in the bag. And they've looked good as well. After they cut Dick Stacy, I love the guy, but it was such a great upgrade once they removed him and got hats on board, right? And they've looked so sharp after that. I think the Asian one is where it's a little bit of a toss-up. Tyloo Vici.
Yep.
Anything could happen. Here it's going to be Renegades, for sure. Order should come second, third, fourth. Does it really matter?
Probably
I don't
not.
think so.
And actually, it's funny because the order that you've got there was the order that we saw the Asia Minor qualifiers for ANZ finishing, where Order and Chiefs played in that lower bracket final. Renegades obviously picked up the upper bracket final, and Avant lost to Chiefs in the lower bracket. So that's pretty much what you've seen already happen, and very well could happen again. But I do want to touch on one more thing here with the ANZ Counter-Strike, because, like, there isn't that much to talk about when you expect that Renegades should just be the team to go straight through. Is that for the ANZ region, there are only 4 teams that are going to compete in this RMR system, whereas in comparison, obviously, to Asia, which had 8. Now, I think part of the reason this is a thing is because when you push all the Asian region together, they had 5 teams that qualified for the Asia Minor. So instantly you can't have a 4-team competition. So you have to go to 8, right? If you're going to have a proper elimination bracket as you normally would. So that's part of the reason I think they've gone to 8. But then, like, obviously there's not 4 teams from ANZ, but is it fair to have it be locked to these 4 teams as opposed to a top 8, for example, Pilly? Because we know that the depth of the ANZ Counter-Strike scene, it's probably not going to be able to compete towards the top end of things, but there are certainly 8 recognized teams right now in ANZ that could put together a pretty good qualifier.
Look, I'll just say it how it is. I think it's irrelevant, and I'm going to base that off my own personal experience as a player. If you're in a top 10 team in Oceanic Counter-Strike, you are fighting and practicing every day of your life to get fisted by someone in the top 3 when you get a game against them, and that's how it is. So at the end of the day, as long as those top couple of teams are the ones playing off for the spots, then you are going to see more often than not those be the teams that actually, deserve to be in that competition. The thing is, though, that like it's a similar kind of thing in the fact that Chiefs are so inconsistent at the moment that if you're going to put a top 4 for ANZCS, the 4th spot could honestly be any of Ground Zero, Chiefs, Rooster.
Airborne has to be in that argument?
I wouldn't. No, I don't think. I think one tournament for Airborne is too much to say they're there yet. And the same thing with Paradox. I think they're not quite at that level. But I do think, even those 2 teams, you could make some sort of an argument. There's like 5 different teams who, if they play really well at the next tournament. Let me put it to you
this way then, right? So because if, for example, Airborne and... Let's say Airborne and Rooster qualified, because theoretically right now, the only teams that are invited are Renegades and Order because they got the minor qualification spot. Avant, for some reason, has a dog shit tournament. Chiefs have a dog shit tournament, and Airborne and Rooster qualify. Is that a fair representation of the top 4 in ANZ?
It's not a fair representation necessarily, but at the same time, this is what I was sort of getting to at the end of that point, and what I started with as well from my experience as a player, playing for a half decent team, not fantastic, but being able to actually have a series against the Chiefs or a series against a Greyhound in a competition or something like that. You're fighting your hearts out through a bracket to potentially just get fisted in the quarterfinals of a competition or something like that, and then a team. You're always going to be looking for that grand final between Order or Greyhound or Order or Avant. And at the end of the day, that's why my top 2 are Renegades and Order. Because the only team that you've ever really been able to see beat Greyhound that often is Order. You looked at some of the MDL seasons and stuff like that. Order's beaten them in some series from time to time. It's different rosters, and it was with Hats back in that time, but they have sometimes been able to beat them. They have been able to take maps or look like they should be able to win series from time to time over the old Greyhound or over this Renegades roster. So the rest of the teams are more so irrelevant. Avant's definitely going to have to show us that they can have that potential to be able to contest Renegades a little bit more as well. Although, in that Rio qualifier, they were able to take a map off of them and beat them on train as well. So that's something that they've shown us. The rest of the teams, apart from those teams who can challenge the top couple, at the end of the day, even if they upset a Chiefs, who is a much more upsettable team, even if they upset an Avant, they're going to get fisted by Order and Greyhound anyway, or Order and Renegades.
So it's actually a little bit ambiguous. It's a little bit ambiguous as to how the system kind of works, right? Because obviously ESL's released how their tournament works in a way, which does say 4 teams. But let's say there's another tournament, because there can be other RMR tournaments. Can a team that didn't qualify for the first one and has 0 points at all in this RMR system then qualify for the second one? Or does the second tournament have to include all 4 of those same teams? I'm not really sure how it works. So I got to say, I hope it's the latter. I hope that, like, for example, let's say Chiefs doesn't qualify for the first one, but they can qualify for the second one and get points out of that. And then it's whoever ends up having the most points at the end of things. My question then and we're moving into like the final segment of the discussion now, which is basically the just chat shit segment, where you guys have given me some topics to bring up here. And the first one that I want to talk about is these DreamHack Masters spring events, right? Which I don't think really anyone's actually talking about at the moment. So is there a world where like maybe that's one of the RMR points tournaments that could potentially be going towards this Rio qualification? I don't know yet. Like, it could be. It certainly seems like the kind of a tournament format that would lend itself to whatever they're trying to do with these RMRs. So hopefully that's the case, right? But let's talk about these DreamHack tournaments because I don't feel like they've been given enough light within ANZ and Asia. So basically, the TLDR is that obviously DreamHack's not having events right now because of coronavirus, so they've got a bit of extra money to splash around by the looks of things. And they've got some big ones going on over in Europe and NA, which have like 100+K prize pools. For us here in Asia and ANZ, we get 20K for 4 teams, which actually, to be honest, like I'm pretty happy with. Like I think a $20,000 tournament online, 2 teams invited with qualifiers for the 2 other teams, double elim. I think that's fucking sick. Like that's an awesome tournament. That's almost ANZ champs. Like it doesn't have 8 teams, it doesn't have a LAN component, but you've got the top 4 teams from each region essentially playing a double elim bracket, and I think that's really good. Obviously, Pili, we talked about this a little bit on the weekend, but this can be nothing but good for both regions, respectively.
Yeah, it's extra competition to play in for some of these teams, and at the end of the day, like that's a bigger prize pool than these teams are used to playing for in the first place. Like I'll just go back, champs was $8,000 for first place, so sort of comparable, but even not quite up to that level. Maybe a little bit less for champs, but a decent amount. I want to go look at MDL as well and check how much that you won for being first place MDL. Just give me a second because I'm keen to see at the end of the day how these prize pools match up. So first place for MDL season 33. It's the global challenge. That I don't know if you got any money, and then Avant got 2,500 for second. So even MDL, it's way more than on offer there. $4,500 prize pool for MDL. That's a whole season of play from January to March. And then this DreamHack tournament comes in and blows that out of the water. It's surely got to be a pretty big motivation for these teams going forward, especially if it is one of these RMR tournaments that's going to potentially qualify you for the biggest tournament.
I gotta say, like these tournaments actually look fucking awesome to me because
they're better than what we've got at the moment. Almost, it's just
when was the last time you saw the top 4 teams in ANZ playing in a double elimination bracket, which again, hopefully, let's say ideally, this turns into an RMR tournament. Think about the stakes that are involved there. Like, that is huge. I mean, I think the Extreme Stand qualifiers actually were a double elim tournament, but it had more than the top 4 teams. So I'm really, really tantalized by the prospect of having the top 4 teams playing a double elim bracket. Like, that is just absolutely massive in my mind.
It is pretty massive. And if you look at, like, for example, even the Asian scene, right? You're looking at Tyler and Vici already in. The only caveat here would be if you look at the number of teams playing from Australia, it's obviously smaller scene. So I guess you could be forgiven for saying that it's going to be Chiefs and Aven are going to make it to the finals, right? It's highly likely. You can't really mess up the seeding that badly. For Asia, I'm the only thing I'm worried about is the qualifier is going to be an online qualifier. It's going to be a massive Pan-Asia qualifier where we have everyone from Korea to Japan to Mongolia, from China to Southeast Asia to the Middle East to India to South Asia to fucking God knows wherever signing up for a qualifier. I just hope to get a seeding right so that we at least in the final, and it's going to be single elimination unless I'm very mistaken.
I think it's double elim.
So it's going to be
for the qualifiers probably single.
No, for the qualifiers, right? So I want to see at least, Pili's homeboys in Thailand, and at least, your Bren and maybe some of the Chinese guys, whatever, make it to the top 8 so that the final 2 spots are filled with at least a couple of decent teams, maybe a Beyond, maybe a Tiger, maybe BTRG, they step it up. I don't know, right? Something like that. I think that'd be cool. But that's the only worry I have. But apart from that, this is great. I completely agree with you 100%. Like, the price pool is pretty damn good, $20,000, not as shabby at all. Although in China, most of these guys are used to playing, for a pretty big prize pool for online events as well.
Wait, is that USD, by the way?
Sure, it would be USD.
It's USD.
If it's USD, that's just like even more.
Especially now with the exchange rate for, I don't know if you've seen, Blair, but the Australian exchange rate has literally just shit the bed. So it's like probably 30,000, 40,000.
I'm no financial expert, but I'm pretty sure that's about $1 million AUD now. So
all right, it's 30,410 AUD.
Yeah, there you go. Another 10 extra grand. Why not?
That's a $32,000 Australian tournament, which is awesome. Now, you obviously talked a little bit about the Asian component of this, Blair, and like, I think it's going to be great to have these qualifiers. I almost feel like this sort of saves Asian Counter-Strike, because you can imagine what things would be like if this didn't exist. There'd just be like this massive black hole of events. But my one concern with this being only 4 teams, and it is still kind of a concern for the ANZ region, but not quite as much, because I think with the Asian scene, there's always going to be that question mark of like, well, we didn't get to see this team or that team playing in it. At least with ANZ, you probably get the top 4 teams. You're like, okay, fair enough. Those are the teams that are going to compete. But with Asia, let's say, theoretically, they're going to invite Vici and Tyloo. If they don't do that, then I don't know what's going on. But if they invite Vici and Tyloo, you got those two, then you're playing off two spots between like Lucid, Beyond, Marzalai Tiger, probably some of those SEA teams, the likes of BTRG, Paper Rex, depending on how they get their shit together. And the unfortunate reality is that you might only get like 2 out of 6 or 7 or 8 teams that realistically could compete in a tournament like this and look like a really interesting tournament. So I almost want to argue for an 8-team tournament with this Asia one, but again, it kind of comes back to the logistics issues. So what's your thoughts on this, Pilly? Is it fine to just have those 4 teams, and is that still going to give us a good competition?
By the way, Tyloo and Vici.
Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and Renegades.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go.
So it's 4 teams, correct? Or
yeah.
So only 2 teams from the rest of Asia get to qualify. Yeah, so that's fucking terrible, because at the end of the day, it's gonna kill so many careers, man. Like, these are the kind of opportunities that people slum it out, every day, practice nonstop for, just to get the opportunity to be able to represent their region and represent, their country. And these are the kind of things that when these opportunities go by the wayside, when you miss out on an opportunity, especially if it's, fair enough, if you lose in a series or you lose at Counter-Strike, to be deprived of an opportunity like this, it's one thing. But due to logistics, due to like ping and stuff like that, it's even worse when you see some of these players miss out on opportunities that are going to define their careers. So at the end of the day, my thoughts on it is, you've already seen a team like Absolute just quit the game from Japan. You've already seen so many players just give up and not want to play anymore. And at the end of the day, it has a massive damaging effect to the competition of the Asian region. You can see whole countries just fade into obscurity in terms of CS due to the fact that they're just not getting anything to play for, or they missed out on those opportunities because, let's say that they have like the best team in their country. Let's say there's like a number 1 team from Indonesia or something like that, and they're not going to be able to get an opportunity to play an international event because Thailand is just too fucking good online. You're going to see a whole country of players, some of the best players from a country not be able to foster other teams, not be able to continue to compete. You're going to see like a complete, dead region, essentially, a dead country in CS, and it's just fucking terrible.
Yeah, so it's obviously great news for Oceania. And I'd say it's still good news for Asia. Like, it's better to have it than not. Yeah,
it's better than nothing.
But ideally, it would be an 8-team tournament.
I agree with Pilly. Like, why wouldn't you have an 8-team tournament? It's not like we have any other events happening right now where everyone's staying at home. You have all the time. It's online as well. You don't have to pay for like, a LAN space or studio space and whatnot, right? So I 100% agree with Pilly. An 8-team would have made way more sense. And
just
I don't think
like, let's do a thought experiment, right? Let's assume Thailand number 1 in qualifiers. You get Beyond and Lucid Dream through to the top 2, right? As well as Vici and Tyloo, like, which is what I've ranked it. You literally have every other country in Asia just thrown directly in the bin to soak up the juices.
Look, let's be real. Korea's still there. They've still got 3 players.
It's a 5-player game. It's a 5-player game.
Thinking about Mongolia
and
players to put 2 or 3 teams together
and
tell them all to get fucked.
Indonesia and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Malaysia.
I mean, Malaysia's going pretty well as well.
Mate.
Yeah, like, they definitely deserve to be recognized within that discussion. So, look, I'm not going to say that we know everything about Asian Counter-Strike, even though the graphic says that. I don't know who made that. But if anyone from DreamHack's listening, make this an 8-team tournament, and it'll be the best Asian tournament of the year. Probably, because we don't think that there's going to be anything else happening.
Yeah.
And also hire us. Hire us for it. We'll do it. We'll cast it.
Hire us, yes.
Yeah.
Pay us the monies. We're good Counter-Strike talkers. Is that a word?
Well, you're not really doing a very good job of selling it, are you?
Oh man, if you look at the end of the day, yeah, make it an 18 tournament, and hire me for it. I want another opportunity to scream Papi Chulo at the top of my lungs, as he absolutely destroys and shits on
Well, Brent needs to
players from other
qualify first.
competitions. Yeah, well, at the end of the day, I feel like, no offense to Bren, they're a pretty good team in Asia, and they're leaps and bounds ahead of where they should be, considering they're from the Philippines. But it's again, same thing, mate. 14 tournament. That's basically like being like, get fucked, Bren. Not good enough to qualify. In that current situation, they'll probably lose a tournament like that where they end up having to play a Thai team or maybe one of the Chinese teams or something like that. They're not going to get shit on. They're probably going to lose like a fucking 14-16 game or something like that in the best of 3. Like, that's the kind of team that they are. They grind out every game. And at the end of the day, if you're seeing teams lose in situations like that to fight for 2 spots in an Asian tournament, who's to say they're necessarily a worse team than the representative that's gone through to play against Tyloo and Vici? There's so many candidates for good teams that should be in there. But if they lose a couple of rounds different of Counter-Strike, their career's fucked.
All right.
Sucks.
Well, on that note, I think we move on to the next question or the next point. Obviously, just to wrap that up, we are really, really keen to see how that those couple of DreamHack tournaments go. And it's kind of like sustaining the Asian scene until coronavirus is over and we get all those sort of regular domestic tournaments back again, which are on land. But I think that's really great moves from DreamHack. But obviously, we want to see how they go first, and then I guess we'll end up discussing how they do end up panning out. But big props from me. I think it's a big move for the Asian region to keep us sustained. Anyway, this will be the final discussion topic for this podcast, and this is one that Pili wanted to have a bit of a chat about in particular. So I might throw this your way first, actually, Blair, just to put you in the hot seat. Don't give you too much time to think about it, but Pili wanted to talk about what we think the next team to step up internationally will be from the Asian region. So let's just go ahead and put in some parameters here. We're going to disregard Renegades because they've already done it. We're going to disregard Tyloo. We're going to disregard Vici because those are sort of the 3 mainstays. So it has to be someone outside of those 3. Are we all agreed? Or I mean, Pili, let's say, are you agreed on that? Because this is your segment.
Yeah, I agree with that. And at the same time, it's boring because the second that you bring someone like Vici into it, we're all going to fall asleep because we're going to be like, yeah, it's obviously Vici or whatever. I want to think about and we're seeing so many different countries at the moment just be on the precipice of developing enough talent to put together a competitive international team. Mongolia, Thailand, etc., etc. I want to have a think about, who actually has that potential to step up and take it internationally with the talent that they've got in that region, with the lineup or whatever in the next couple of months. And at the same time, if you think about that kind of stuff, you're also answering at the same time the question of who gets affected the most by all of this stuff that we've been talking about. Who's going to miss that opportunity window where they've had Pro League the last couple of seasons? That's no longer available to them. Now you're seeing this stuff happen with the Rio Minor. You had a couple of regions where the players are finally starting to get to a position where they could maybe push it internationally. They've been working on their game. They've been playing these tournaments and stuff like that. And they are potentially about to, through no fault of their own, miss that window.
All right, Blair, it's your time to shine.
Rough question. I'm going to stick with my guns and say that there's not going to be a good team come out from Asia internationally in this iteration of Counter-Strike.
So not in Global Offensive.
However,
is what you're saying.
Not Global Offensive. I don't think it's going to happen. However, if you want me to be ultra optimistic and as un-bleh as possible, I'm going to go the way of Tiger. And here's my reasoning, right? Forecast. Only reason. I know it's taken a while. I know this sucks so far online. It's not really working out. But the one thing I've always said, whenever someone asks me, dude, why does Asian CS suck? There's always been the fact that there's a lack of trickle down of information and trickle down of Counter-Strike in-game knowledge from the older generation to the newer generation. That's never happened in CSGO. And even if it's happened, it's been stuck in a particular region, like we had the South Koreans with the MVP PK with MVP PK, but they never really dealt with anyone else outside of the country, right? Urkaz coming from Australia. And yeah, Australia's not exactly a tier 1 scene, but he played with Greyhound. And Greyhound, when he was playing with them, they were challenging some of the best teams out there. Maybe not winning all the games, but they were taking maps here and there against some top 10 teams and whatnot. So he knows what he's doing. He's also helping Dexter Call. So it's not just a raw fragger. He had some gray matter being applied in those games. So him coming into that lineup with Dodobu, Cabal, and NCL, I believe that could, like him coming in there, I'm still going to give it a little bit of time. I think they could potentially do damage. I don't see them doing more damage than Tyler and VJ have done the past 3 or 4 years, but at least maybe matching up to them. But that depends a lot on how the old guard in the form of NCL and Cabal take his feedback or his information or his inputs, because that's be the biggest problem with Asian players. Notoriously, I mean, they've been very notorious for not really listening to to good advice. They'll be like, no, we know what to do. This is our style with the Mongols or with the Chinese teams or with Tyler or Vici. We know exactly what to do. We're going to make it work. And it always falls flat. That's been a trouble with Ivan and Karsa. Why do you think Ivan and Karsa haven't really made it really that big? Because there are not many players who are willing to listen to them, right? So yeah, I'm going to go the way with Tiger. I think they're the one team who I believe can potentially have more of an upward trajectory remaining in them. But realistically, I don't see anyone really breaking through.
I got to say,
internationally, not in this.
I'm not that surprised by your answer, given how things went for this whole discussion earlier on with the Asia Minor and stuff. Like, it definitely seemed that you were most optimistic about Tiger. But Pili, you must have obviously had something to say here, because this is sort of, you brought this up, so you must have some pretty spicy opinion here, or at least something that you want to get out.
Spicy, yes.
Yeah, and
Pili's a Thai man. What did you know?
And change your minds, because my answer is not Thailand. My answer is BTRG.
I fucking knew it.
Like, you are gonna have a team that is a mixed team of English speaking. I literally stole your idea, Blair. It came out of your brain. So that's how you know you're gonna change your mind and agree with me, mate. It has to be a mixed team of English speaking Asian players with relevant experience, and a decent coach or something like that. I don't think, I agree with you guys. Like, Thailand, a little bit too inconsistent on LAN. Although they have the talent in that region to actually break through and be the best team in the region, once they take that step to go internationally, they're just going to get fisted, in my opinion. And it's going to take a lot of fistings for them to, sorry to use that terminology so often.
I love it.
Someone's wincing listening to this podcast, but yeah, it's going to take a lot of getting bashed, that the Asian scene sort of experienced. Like, that's how China got so good, right? Being the best region, and then you get beat up enough online. You get beat up enough going overseas that you eventually get better. Is how they started to actually improve and stuff like that. I don't think Thailand has that kind of time with how competitive the region is and how competitive the scene is. I think it obviously has to be a mixed team, and it has to be some guy with a lot of money that's going to go and buy the players that he needs and the talent that he needs, and also the leadership that he needs to build a team that's good enough to actually compete overseas.
I kind of want to go down the rabbit hole of what you think that mixed team would be, but I also kind of want to leave that as another episode. What do you guys think?
I think we leave it.
Yeah,
I think
that's a good topic.
My brain is too mushy at the moment, and as well as with how stagnant the scene's going to be for the next couple of months, we're going to run out of discussion topics pretty soon, and I don't want to talk about Elfish Guy's toes before at least.
My toes are great,
10.
by the way. I have 10 of them.
So good. 10 toes.
So on that note, we're going to leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger. Episode 3 will probably feature that discussion. If it doesn't, it means something astronomically, insanely awesome has happened in the Asia scene that we just had to talk about. But let's face it, that's probably not going to happen. So we'll wrap things up here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. That was a pretty fun one to talk about, because I really like sort of theory crafting and all that jazz. So if you did appreciate it, if you did enjoy it, let us know in the comments. Give us a like, give us a sub. Very much appreciated if you do any of that. But I'll throw the floor to you first this time, Blair. Where can we find you? What's your final thoughts and any shout outs?
You found me right there. Wait, hold
Yep.
on. Am I doing this right?
Yep.
Too low. There we go. Right there. Twitter, Instagram, same handle. Follow me. I post a lot of fucking shit. It's fun. It's funny at times. I think it's funny, but yeah. Final thoughts, Jordan Pili. I mean, yeah, it's cool to theory craft. It just sucks that we're never going to see this played out. at least a minor, we won't really know who's going to win it. It's going to be the the RMR system. It's going to be online, so it kind of sucks that we won't really be able to figure out who was right, who was wrong. But it was cool. I think it was a cool thought exercise, and even for people wondering like how things would have played out, I would actually love to have done this. Do this for the other regions as well, like EU minor, for example, or NA and whatnot. I think it's something we could even give it a shot, maybe down the line, if we do have the time. But yeah, I think it was pretty cool.
Well,
episode,
look,
man.
I will say one thing in the favor of it not happening is that sometimes your fantasies are better than reality, Blair, and maybe it's better that you don't get to see Tiger shitting the bed at the Asia Minor and coming last and losing to Camel Rider. Anyway, Pilly, what about you? What's your final thoughts?
Yeah, any opportunity where I can talk up Thailand is an opportunity that I will definitely take. Look, I'm hoping that these DreamHack events really do start to, and more opportunities really do start to crop up for some of these teams to play. And I really hope that they listen to the feedback and the whinging of a lot of the people who are involved with Asian CS, because they're the ones that have to deal with this BS. And a lot of the times, you'll see organizers that aren't able to really cater to the very niche needs that is only really a problem a lot of these things in Asia, unfortunately, nowadays. So I hope that those opportunities are dealt with appropriately by whoever's organizing them, and I hope that the teams will get the opportunity to play in them, and I hope that I get an opportunity to be involved in some capacity. But at the end of the day, involved or not, Jordan, we're still going to be sitting here just unrecorded, shooting the shit as we always do about this Asian CS and the ANZ region, because it's what we love, mate.
And even if we don't get to cast it, we'll probably still end up talking about it here on Geographically Challenged. That was Pilly. Obviously, you can find him at Pilly CSGO on Twitter. Even though he doesn't post anything, he only ever retweets the shit that I post, so you may as well just follow me on Elfish Guy.
Listen, I just want to go to Thailand with Pilly. I just think I feel I'm gonna.
I think he'd probably be one of the best wingmen you could ever find, because he's really only figured out how to say sex, pussy, and boobies in Thai.
That is perfect. That's
anyway,
all I need to know.
on that note, that's Geographically Challenged episode 2 done and dusted. And my final thoughts are Iros for events.